Hello, this is Debbie McAllister, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I am so excited for our guest, and you are going to be too. I have with me today Kristi H. Sullivan. She's a human design and self care expert. She's also an author, a speaker who's on a mission to help busy women stop overworking and start overflowing. She hosts a virtual community for female personal development junkies like herself. I think I'm included in there to create better wellness, improve relationships, shift mindsets, and manifest more success, wealth, and freedom to live their best life by design. She's also a lead author of a best selling Amazon book called Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing 25 Ways to Transform Your Life Using Human Design. And this was published in October 2021 through Brave Healer Productions with 25 other human design practitioners. You know, that's full of goodness. She's also a co-author of 3 collaborative books that were produced during the 2020 pandemic. The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, Volume 2, The Great Pause, Blessing and Wisdom from COVID-19, and Transformation 2020, along with 2 additional anthologies, if I pronounce that right, which launched this summer, The Ultimate Guide to Creating Your Soul-Aligned Business and Wealth Codes. Kristi teaches internationally, both in person and virtually, and has been featured on dozens of podcasts, workshops, and conferences. She's also been a certified yoga instructor for nearly 2 decades, and she became a full-time solopreneur in 2020. Welcome, Kristi.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you.
I love that you showed the visual of your book while I was on it. So, for those who want to go see it on the podcast, who want to go see it on YouTube, they can actually see the video of it. So, welcome. I'm so excited, to be able to talk about 2 of my favorite things, human design and self-care.
Yes.
It's just super, super powerful. So, and I really love when you talk about female personal development junkies. How
That's
did
what
you come
that's
up with that? Or how would you define a self-development junkie?
someone who's always kind of exploring,
Uh-huh.
likes learning about new tools, more about themselves, and isn't afraid to do some of that inner work and exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good, all the stuff that we come up through that inner exploration of who we are and all of the experiences that all rolled in together to make us a better version of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. To uncover, I think, all those layers that make us who we are, and sometimes making it better, but sometimes just accepting who we are too.
Oh yeah. That is a big thing that we talk about here on Light Up Your Worth is that whole self-acceptance and providing really different types of resources and how people can kind of all bring it together and things that we all might be going through or the listeners or what you've gone through and sometimes I probably talk a lot too as I talk to people, but I really wanted to get us started and just see if you would give us just like a high level overview of how you see human design for those who maybe have heard of it but they're not quite sure what it is, and then we'll lead into how does human design help us with understanding our own self-care.
Yeah. Yeah, I will start sort of at the top. Human design came around in the 80s. So I consider it a fairly new tool, but it blends together some old ancient wisdom. And astrology is one of those wisdoms and is one of the main components. So it is based on your birth date. So as a personal development junkie, you may have taken a personality assessment or those quizzes. And usually those are based on a set of answers, questions and answers of how your upbringing was, your life experiences, how you answer things. And human design is actually just based on your birth date. And when you pull it up, you can find it on the internet in different places. it's like an astrology chart in a way, but it's of your blueprint of your energy. So it's unique to you. And unlike astrology that just says 12 zodiac signs, human design has over 3 billion combinations. And we start by talking about energy types, and then we peel back different layers from there. So it really shows your uniqueness. And I think of it like the vehicle that you're driving on life's path, because we're all in either heading in different directions or have, different choices of which path to take.
Mhm.
And human design helps us understand who we are on that path, our authentic self.
Yeah, isn't that just like how you're actually created, right? Like when I think about the human design, and I know that um sometimes it can seem a little complicated, when you go to look at it. And so I'm glad that you've spent a lot of time studying it to be able to
Well,
impart that wisdom on us.
I did discover it about 6 years ago, and I think it just takes time. For me, it resonated a lot because another component of the system is the chakra system. And I have taught yoga for many years, so that resonated for me. I also say it's sort of like how you were encoded or how you're wired, sort of
Mhm.
your operating system that's behind the scenes. And, when we take our life experiences and the things that we learn in life, our conditioning, our programming, those are the layers like on top of this core design that you are. So yeah, it is how we are born.
Yeah, I have found that some parts of it just super resonate with me. Like super, super powerful. Like I'm a role model, like life's in 3 stages for me, and I'm in this 3rd stage now.
Me
And
too.
I'm like, wow, this actually feels like really resonates with, how that comes about. So then I'm curious, I'm going to go back to what I was thinking about a minute ago, was that so when we take that understanding of what human design is, it's kind of like our blueprint, our makings of how we come into this with how many billions of choices that can actually happen with that combination. And how does that translate into understanding about self-care? Or maybe we should start with what's self-care really, and how
Yeah,
does
that
it fit in with human design?
so a few different things I think that I look at, which is one, we know that self-care is more important than ever these days. And I know that many people are aware of, the things that we do to make sure that we have good wellness and well-being, like getting enough sleep, eating the right foods, exercising. But I think of self care also as something deeper, which, if you explore really how you are, what makes you tick, again, that personal development aspect, and also some inner work and growth that we're naturally doing. But when you do the type of self care to really peel back some of those layers and really help to understand who you are in a deeper sense, I think that's the kind of self care that at least speaks to me, and I think to many people who were probably listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
And when you use human design as one of those tools to help you understand yourself and to help you, again, maybe not improve, but accept who you are, and then help you on that life path that you're moving forward on, that tool, human design as a tool, can, I think, be really transformational. There are so many different things out there that we can use. And again, human design complements other things, but I think it's one of the deeper tools that I've come across. And
Mhm.
then there's also the aspect of continuing to do self care so that we are who we are authentically. Like giving ourselves permission if we need more rest, giving ourselves permission if we want to do things that light us up and help align our energy, because that's really what human design is all about your energy. So I see the two going hand in hand.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really important thing about aligning your energy. So, When I think about that, you know, I think we had mentioned before we started taping is sometimes we feel out of alignment, like we just don't feel like ourselves, or maybe you're not. Maybe another aspect of it is that sometimes I when I feel out of alignment, it's more along the lines of like almost like I have a mask on and I'm kind of trying to be what other people think I should be.
Mhm.
And in as I've been shedding this with this inner acceptance, it's been a journey, a 20-year continual lifetime journey, is that trying to understand what that alignment is. And so does human design help you like kind of like gives you a tool when you go inward to understand what is even alignment within ourselves?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's different for everybody. And I think, again, human design can be a tool to help you understand what that alignment is for you.
Hmm.
So if I dive in a little bit to the tool, for example, 70% of the population are in a category where for them, doing the right kind of work lights them up and brings them into alignment, getting movement every day, feeling productive, but also in a way that aligns with your values and again feels like what you're doing is lighting up your energy. And then there's 30% of the population where, as we talk about their energy blueprint, they need a lot of rest and downtime. They may not be as productive, at least on the outside, where they're working 9 to 5. They need more flexibility. They can work just as hard, but they're doing it in a way that helps them honor that energy blueprint that they are and align because they can quickly burn out if they're trying to act like the 70% of the population. So it's really about understanding your energy, what alignment means, especially if you look at it through the lens of your human design,
Hmm.
and then doing the right kind of self care to help optimize and maintain that energy.
Yeah. So I believe I'm an emotional manifesting generator, which is supposed to have like, well, have big energy waves. With my
So
understanding of it, is that we have to kind of learn how to ride the wave of the
So
emotions.
we're going to take a look definitely at
Yeah.
your design as an example. So let's start with that manifesting generator. That's called one of the energy types. And I described a little bit that generators, there's two kinds, pure generators and manifesting generators. They make up 70% of the population. And we're here to be productive and be doing things and feel like we are getting things done, so to speak, and checking off the list. And we wake up every day ready to respond and move forward. And manifesting generators, though, do it a little bit differently. They can do it in a much quicker manner, kind of like a time bender. They can quickly find shortcuts. They may not take the long route, they may take the shorter route. They also like to juggle multiple projects. And they also just, like to sometimes move forward with things once something new comes up. They may start something and maybe not finish it because when something new comes up, they feel creative and they want to go in that direction. So the manifesting generator has all these qualities, and that's about half of that 70%. And then you mentioned the emotional wave, which is an aspect not related to type, but actually to about 50% of the overall population. And for your design, that comes into play. I, for example, am a generator without emotional wave, but you've got this emotional wave that's pretty natural for you, and it comes in highs and lows. So we're kind of starting to like look at different aspects of your specific design. And as you can see, there's many different layers.
Yeah. Yeah, because it also pulls in like the gates and you know, I think that's probably where you get more deeper into it with understanding like how,
Yeah.
like what type of, or how do I make my decisions, and how, like what would feel in alignment for me to have self-care versus, somebody who's maybe a projector or a regular manifester even.
Yeah. So let's look maybe at the different types. And I mentioned generators and
Mhm.
manifesting generators. One of the things that might be helpful for self-care for those two types is to be sure that we're getting movement every day. It's like we've got this
Hmm.
battery inside of us and we need to use up all the energy that it's producing. So whether we're busy, not just with work, but with things again that light us up and that feel good, but also movement. So what does that self-care look like? How can you move every day? And you'll know that you've done that kind of movement and using up the battery if you sleep well, because when you're at the end of the day, you should feel tired as though you're, not overtired, but like, okay, I'm ready. My battery has depleted and I'm ready to recharge with some good sleep. So that's the generators and manifesting generators. Then we have the other three types. And this again is just sort of the first layer we look at in human design. These other three types are the projector, manifester, and the reflector. And all three of these types little bit different in their aspects, but they share the same quality that they don't have such a big battery. Their battery is smaller and they just need to recharge themselves throughout the day to keep that battery going. So, some downtime, some alone time. Maybe their self care means going out, being in nature, taking a walk. Maybe it's laying down for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be a nap, but I feel that, everybody's experience can be different. So
Mhm.
just understanding what downtime and alone time means if you're one of those three types, and does it recharge you? Does it help you with recharging and feeling like you've got the energy throughout the day? And then when you're going to bed, those three types should have some downtime about 30 minutes before they actually fall asleep, and that will help them to sleep. So those are some examples of self-care for the different types.
Oh, that's really, that's a great tip. If there those 30 minutes before where we just kind of fall into bed and we're asleep. 'Cause
Yeah, exactly. That's the generator. If they're worn out,
Oh,
they should be able to close their eyes and
yeah.
go right to sleep.
Yeah, I've always done that. I go if I don't, then it's really rare. So now what if you are like a generator, manifesting generator, regular generator, which is 70% of the population, where we have bigger energy packs. Now, what if our energy isn't feeling so full? Like
Mm,
what does that tell or indicate for somebody who's listening? Like what
yeah.
should we be paying attention to then?
Well, that's a good question. And there's certainly a lot of things when you like have a reading with somebody, I think that can be really helpful because we can look at the design and say, well, what are you experiencing? How are you experiencing it? Some general things I might say is that if you're feeling like your energy is not in alignment, whether you're a generator or even if you're one of the other three types, most likely, we have to just be really aware of burnout these days. Burnout to me is when either as the projector, manifester, or reflector, you're not getting enough rest. You're not giving yourself enough downtime. You're trying to keep up with everything else. The generator types, I think, find burnout to affect their energy if they're saying yes to too many things, and if they're saying yes to things that they really don't love, that they are not really, again, they're not lit up about. And, that's really important because a generator wants to be busy and doing things. That's definitely something that can affect your energy. And you mentioned things like gates and channels. That's something when we get more into the weeds about human design, we can
Mm.
also look at to say, are you suppressing certain areas of your design? Are you conditioned, like, for example, to not be using your voice when you're built to be using your voice? Manifesting generators have that defined throat, we call it. So, have you been taught that you need to be quiet and not heard as a child,
Yes.
be seen and not heard.
Heard.
And those are sometimes things, conditioning that we've been brought up to believe and to perform, that we can also affect, it can also affect our energy, and we can really suffer from feeling drained because of the conditioning and the effects of that.
Oh, that's really fascinating. I hadn't really ever connected that. Some of the programming and how we've been conditioned, to behave a certain way. I had never really thought about that with human design. So now I want to go back to something you said about downtime. And I want to explore that for a minute. Like when I think of downtime, and I want to hear your perspective, is that, you know, it for myself, downtime isn't putting on a movie. Like, I mean, what would you encompass is in that, what's downtime really? I mean, I know it's probably kind of a big subject, but what could that possibly mean? Because most people are like, well, if you're used to going and going, it's not like I just want to sit there.
Right. Right. And I'll go back to, again, self care can be downtime in many different ways. It could be just getting outside of your normal routine, stepping away from the doing. And for example, going out for a walk could be downtime. For manifesting generators, I'm going to use you as an example. Another piece of downtime might be doing something creative and really using your energy in a creative way. It could be, for you, listening to podcasts, getting different ideas, but it's in a way feeling nurturing to you and feeling like your energy is getting also rejuvenated from whatever that downtime is. Sometimes for people, it's just going and doing something alone for the day or for a
Mm,
few hours. Sometimes downtime is not being around people. Sometimes downtime is taking a vacation with your family and stepping again outside of the routine. So I think it's, in this day and age, a lot of it is just the simple idea of slowing down
mhm.
and not being so busy or moving so fast pace, that our energy is not even keeping up with what we're think we need to do and what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed over since the big, pandemic, is that I had already started to incorporate, probably a good year before that, like more white space on my own home calendar, right, versus the work calendar. But I had also, in like probably back in like 2014, I started having what I call PJ weekends, where I would, maybe it's one day, but I would be I call it puttering around my house, and I would either be putting on, leggings before the pandemic, obviously, when everybody started to live in leggings, but, leggings, or, something, sweats or something of that nature, and then I would basically not talk to anybody. I would be around my house. If my, son was home, great. If not, because he was an adult, not a big deal, but I would go and just do, like, small things, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go arrange my junk drawer in the kitchen," or all of a sudden you find yourself rearranging your towels. I mean, some weird things that I would do, or, work on just miscellaneous stuff, relax, read a book, journal, maybe listen to, like, a podcast or something, or a sappy movie that I owned, that I'd already seen 100 times, like Under the Tuscany Sun. I just absolutely love that book, or the movie too, and
Yeah.
so downtime isn't really, it's it's whatever's gonna start to feed our soul.
Yeah, it really is meant to be nourishing. I think that's a good word to describe it. And also, something else I can bring into this is the idea that our nervous system can often be so heightened. And when it's nourishing, it helps our nervous system to recalibrate and to not just be in alignment, but to really take that break from that doing and overthinking and over moving and just this fast speed that we seem to sense that's happening
Mhm.
around us. So when you're doing some downtime, I think it's got to be that kind of nourishing self-care and also really helpful for your stress levels to reduce and your nervous system to really get back to balance.
Yeah, because I've read, and I can't recall what the source was, but is that our nervous system isn't made for the modern world with all of the electronics and the pace that we're going at. We weren't really created in our internal body, the nervous system isn't really built for the pace that we are currently living at.
Yeah, I think we just have to be more aware of, what is going on for us underneath. That's some of that inner work.
Mhm.
Think things like connecting to nature is really important because nature naturally balances you, whether it's being close to water or walking in the woods, whatever, again, whatever that landscape is that feels good to you. There's even float tanks now that you can
Oh,
go to,
yes.
right? And you can be in water
Yes.
even if
Yep.
you're not near an actual body of water.
Yeah, I love that. There's a float tank. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, but there's a float tank I go to in downtown Boise, Idaho when I'm out there. That's the first one
Yeah.
I've ever been to, and I've been there more than once now, and it is so relaxing in a whole different way, the whole science behind the float tanks.
Yeah, it can really be helpful even with PTSD. And, to some level, even after the pandemic, we've all experienced some level of PTSD, even if it may not be one from, a larger trauma like war or, um, something that's really life threatening. But we can see that, any type of trauma that we've experienced, we have an effect in our body from that. And so, really doing this type of self care and nurturing to help on that level is important.
Mhm. Yeah, I really love the word nurturing. And I know you had mentioned sleep was the very first thing that you thought of, or that you shared that you thought of. Sorry about that. But so when you think about sleep, how have you figured out for yourself what's the right amount of sleep that you need? Did you go through some type of process to be able to figure that out for yourself or
Yeah. And I think that was my own sort of experimenting because this isn't
Mhm.
necessarily in my design to tell me like how many hours to sleep.
Yeah.
But what I experience is that I like to usually try to go to bed at the same time. And I like to go a couple hours before midnight. This is in one belief, the Ayurveda system, that the healing really happens in your body. This, if you're in tune with that circadian rhythm and the nature's rhythm of cycle around the hours of 10 to 2 in the middle of the night is really optimal time for sleeping. And then trying to wake up at a similar time and also not getting up with an alarm clock if I can help it, where I ease out of bed. And again, that's helpful for me for my nervous system. And I think some people like they really enjoy routine. I know my husband will walk every day and that's his routine, but I tend to be a little bit more spontaneous in like what am I doing first thing in the morning. But the sleep is really important because if I'm not feeling like if I'm feeling I need a little rest and I'm not feeling as energized, I'll give myself a little bit more time so I'm not rushing.
Mhm. I really like that. I had done an experiment for about 10 months where I did not really very rarely set the alarm.
Mm.
And what I discovered, and it actually didn't take that long, was that my body had its own yeah, it had its own rhythm, and it would wake up within, like, this half an hour period of time every day. And, when I would go to bed was mostly at the same time. And then if I broke it, say I stayed up really late working on something, usually on the, electronically, right? Working until midnight or something crazy. And it wouldn't really change the time that I still woke up. And,
Yeah.
it was pretty surprising how our bodies can get into that natural rhythm of sleep.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I think that's one of the things we're finding is that in this modern day, things are going fast and there's a lot of technology and a lot of things that are not really the natural nature um, derived things. And when we get back to that nature, it helps us with balance, I think, because we're evolving on a
Mhm.
technology level, but we also need to evolve on, I think, a natural level. And then, something else that just brought to mind was, when we're again talking about sleep, it's different for everybody. And I really think that I remember one of my friends saying, "I don't need much sleep," and she really would go to bed always late, and she only needed a few hours, and she just operated like that. But when she learned about her human design and she started to give herself some more time to rest, she started to feel different. But it wasn't until she really experimented and
Mhm.
felt that experience differently. And so for her, she changed her pattern.
Yeah.
And, again, that's something in our human design is checking in with how does it feel in your body. And also we call it using our inner authority. What's right for you? What does your body respond to that says, yes, this is what I need, or no, that's not what I want to do, but I need to do it a different way. And
Mhm.
using not the head, but the body to help us with that.
Yeah. I know when I was in the child raising years of life, I think I was lucky to get 5 to 6 hours of sleep because I was also working on my bachelor's degree in that time frame. Mom, I remember thinking if I got 6 hours of sleep, I was in nirvana. And what I realize now is that I was really, um, really hard on my nervous system because I was always tired. Like, like you're running on almost like an adrenaline to be able to
Mm,
keep going. And so now that I'm past that phase of my life and I have more flexibility is how much I almost feel like not that your body catches up, but I feel like now my body actually needs that 8 to 9 hours and 10 hours. I am so on everything. Like it's amazing what it does, how it can impact our moods and even how reacting to it and then understanding that I'm an emotional uh manifesting generator, how it helps me kind of understand like, well, how did I sleep the last 2 nights versus what's happening. It's been kind of a nice guide to be able to go by understanding that about my own human design.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure again, sleep can really help align you and help that energy to run in that optimal way that it needs to run.
Mhm. Now, if somebody's listening and they're thinking to themselves, how can I start to make decisions not from my head, but to actually make them from my heart? How does human design help us do that?
So in our design, and it's unique to each person, there are different places in the body that are signaling sort of our inner wisdom. We can think of this being as heart based because it's you know who we are, but really the places are a couple places are the emotional center, which is the wave that you have, and um, feeling in to the decisions and giving yourself some time to ride out your emotional wave so you come to a place of neutral emotional clarity can be helpful. For me, it's the sacral center. And this is
Mm.
giving me a signal of yes or no. And it usually comes in this form of a gut sound, which is uh-huh or uh-uh. And then we have the splenic, which is the spleen is an intuition, an intuitive hit. And usually one of these dominates the other. There's a couple other types, but in those examples, like one of them dominates the other in terms of what your design kind of relies on. So when you understand your human design, they say that the head is really just there to hold information. Oftentimes, we're programmed to use our head for decision making,
Mhm.
but really, solutions don't come from the mind, and our decision making needs to come from more of the inner body and the wisdom. We can be heart based and let it come through that center as well. But it really, it's worth looking into your design and trying to reconnect with these more body signals that we naturally have.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. So I hope people go and get their design because it can really make a big difference in being able to even absorb with what we're talking about, with how it can impact us with the self-care. And I want to kind of like shift gears and I want to talk to you about this book that that you wrote about stop overworking and start overflowing. And I'm really curious to figure out, how did you come to this place where you decided to write about overworking?
Yeah.
I wanna hear about this.
So part of my journey in my kind of self discovery was recognizing that I have a background in Eastern European culture background. And I was working a full time job and doing a side hustle and just doing a lot to try to make something happen. When I discovered human design, I then realized that I was not in really the right energy or the energy that felt the best for me. And I was overworking. I was really trying to make something happen because I thought in my conditioning that if I have to be successful, I've just got to put in the hours and work hard. And so in 2020, I had an opportunity to shift out of the full time career that I had and move into my own business. And when I did that, I didn't jump into a 12-hour day and working as hard as I could. I took time to do my self care. I took time to see what was coming up for me in terms of opportunities. I had an opportunity to be part of another book, that one of the collaboration books that I you mentioned in the beginning, The Ultimate Guide to Self Healing. I then had an opportunity to speak about human design, and I just started to follow sort of these breadcrumbs and opportunities that, as a generator, was coming up for me to respond to. And when I decided that I wanted to bring together 25 other human design practitioners to write a collaborative book, this theme came up. Like, how did we find human design and what did it do for us? And this theme of a lot of us are overworking. But if we can understand our human design and make different choices, then life can flow. We can feel that flow, be more in the flow. We're still doing work, we're still moving ahead and evolving, but we're doing it in a way that's more in alignment with our energy.
Mm,
So that's where the book came around. And I have part of my design to be a connector. I think you and I share similar
yeah.
profiles.
Yes.
And so I connected to people who were going to contribute to the book and be that author. And so proud to say that there's 25 of us who put that book together.
Well, that's quite the accomplishment, and I really love how you focused it around those 2 main questions, like how did it find you and how did it impact you, if I got that right? So, each person's been able to then give their journey about this overworking and, as a main thing that kept coming up, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
so each
Mhm,
chapter is individual.
mhm.
It's about that individual person's story of how they discovered human design, but each also gives a tip or a tool to help with energy alignment.
Mhm.
So you can open up to any chapter. It's kind of like a chicken soup for the soul book.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love those type of books. They're becoming really popular, And, that's probably my first book is going to be along those lines because I've met so many amazing people on this podcast, and their stories have a lot of resonating themes as well. So now I'm really curious as you were working in a regular role, 9 to 5 job, just over broke as some people like to laugh about. But but you had a job and then you were doing your side hustle. And the side hustle is really super popular in American culture. Like if somebody doesn't have a side hustle, you're kind of wondering, you know, like, what aren't you building, right? Like, what aren't you trying to do? And so many people are doing, this side hustle. So if somebody's in this situation, they have their chart and they're trying to understand, what if they're wanting to make something like a leap like you're talking about with the job, with the side hustle, and still stay in alignment with their human design. How do you possibly begin to go down that path?
Well, I can give you the example of my path, which was I started to recognize that some of that side hustle was really lighting me up. It was about health and wellness. I was teaching yoga and just really wanting to make an impact for overall well-being. And I for myself felt like I was experiencing shifts in my well-being, and I wanted to share that. And I think when I really spent a few years doing that inner work, it helped me to make that leap. It helped me to understand again who I was and to slow down and to not feel that I had to work hard to make that hustle success. I mean, that was important in some sense, but it was also equally important, if not even more, for me to work on my mindset, for me to understand what was the conditioning behind my programming. What did I need to change? Who did I want to become? And I think that led me to be able to shift into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. That's a really powerful question, Christy. Who do I want to become? Who do I
Yeah.
want to become?
And dreaming and using the imagination, but also allowing some of it to unfold. We don't always know that answer right away. So,
Mhm.
how do we create a lifestyle or day to day, schedule that allows us to let things somewhat unfold?
Yeah. Yeah, and that really is opposite of what we've kind of been taught or programmed into believing, go do the hustle. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Work hard, not work smart, but work hard to be able to do it. And then, with you doing, live your best life by design, you know, understanding to do less is more.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing even things like the great resignation
Mhm.
and people just shifting, making shifts in their lives. Self care more important than ever because people are, I think, awakening to the fact of, who am I? Is this my optimal self? Is this who I authentically feel I want to be? And who do I want to become?
Mhm. Yeah, I've been hearing the Great Resignation. The other one I've been hearing more of too, just recently, is the quietly quitting.
Yes. I heard another phrase similar to that, but quiet firing. I thought, oh my
Oh,
goodness, that's an interesting one too. But
oh,
quiet quitting is what I also picked up
yeah.
on recently.
I haven't heard the quiet firing, but definitely the quitting. I thought, wow, I had never really thought about that, right? Like you pay me this much, that's how much of my energy I'm gonna give you. And I'm gonna save it. And I thought, wow, that really goes against a lot of programming that at least I believe my generation received as we were growing up.
Yeah, it feels almost a little rebellious, but I feel like the root of it is, are we allowing ourselves to be who we authentically feel we are and in the right environment doing the right kind of work? For 70%,
Hmm.
that's a key to aligning our energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that when I'm with like doing this podcast, it is definitely in alignment with who I am. I am I get so excited. That's why at first I thought when I introduce you, introduce all my guests, I'm always using that word excited, but I generally am excited. Like, there's no other word that fits that excitement that I feel, the curiosity to hear about your gifts, a bit of your journey and, how you've come to be at this place and how you're really serving others, how you're making an impact. And I'm so I'm grateful that you are out there, finding your bliss and creating what really aligns with you. Um, so how would you define when we're living in our, best life by design, how we're able to then even manifest more overflowing? And how does that fit in with human design?
Mm. Again, if we take a look at the different types, and my book actually has the different types. So you'll find some people who are generators, and for them, I think overflowing is just noticing what's in front for them to respond to and choosing from their inner wisdom what's the right thing for them to do or what lights us up and moving forward in that right direction, even though sometimes we don't know where it's going to lead to. For the projector types, they again need that downtime. They need to be recognized and invited because they share a lot of like to share wisdom and insight, and their energy feels like it needs to really be connected, to the right people to make an impact. The manifester, which is only 9% of the population, their overflowing is really about allowing their creativity to take them to innovate and initiate different projects and different things. Um, and the last, the reflector, when they're in feeling healthy and in a healthy environment, they're overflowing. So each type has sort of a little bit different flavor of energy. But I think the thing that we all share is that if we, again, are doing our self care and just start to understand sort of what is the way that we've been encoded and how do we operate to the best type of energy that works for us, then we
Mhm.
can be overflowing.
Yeah. Well, I like that. Thank you for breaking that down by each of the types too. I think that's really helpful for the listeners to understand. And one word that I've always been curious about with the human design, and maybe because I'm an emotional, generating manifester and it comes up, but I also because I've read some about the projector, is that and I know it's probably in the others too, is when you're out there and you're supposed to be receiving, right? Like you had talked about how you were almost chasing it down and it talks about receiving. Now, I go back and forth in my own head about what is that? Like, how do I take action and receive? Like, what
Mm.
does that look like for you? I mean,
So, and I'm going to just use the word responding, which is a little bit different because it's still moving forward, but in response to something, like waiting for the next step to show up so that you can choose, is that the right step for me? It's different than initiating, than creating the step and making something happen, which we can all do. But I think for the generator types, it just ends up being a little bit more work for us to have to do that. When we allow ourselves to know that the right thing is going to show up for us and we respond to it in a way, receiving the trust and that faith that um, when we take the first step, then the next step will show up and the next step. And we, again, don't have to always know how that's going to work out, but that we will be on a path. And responding is also something that if we looked at our design, that it's coming from the sacral energy center, that responding is very much part of what that energy likes to do. If you think about as a generator, manifesting generator like you, how good it feels to respond to something like somebody calls you up to ask you, um, can you provide this service or can you speak or You put out a request for podcast guests, and suddenly the right ones show up, and you're able to respond and book them. So it's an interesting way, because oftentimes people think, what am I doing? Just waiting and doing nothing? Well, no, you're preparing. You're waiting and preparing for the next thing to respond to.
Oh, I really like that example. I said, like, I find some of my guests through a podcast group, and then I get responded back. And the first time I posted something in there, it like blew up my calendar for like 5 months. Like,
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
so many responses that it was a bit overwhelming, actually. I was like, "Wow, I didn't expect that." But the whole act of, I think where I get confused is the whole act of even putting the information in that group for people to respond. So, if I understand it correctly, it's like, okay, I could put a couple feelers out for different things, and if there is responses to it, then that could be the next step versus, putting things out, putting things something out there, something out there, something out there, and going after all of it, but really
Yes, yes.
waiting to see what
Yeah.
happens.
And choosing, like, knowing that, okay, I'd like to find some guests. Let me put something out for others to respond to, but also recognizing when it's forcing or trying to initiate, and really that energy just feels different in the energy and in the
Mhm.
generator body.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. That's a really good example for me to be able to understand, like, because I've heard it, so I'm sure others have heard it too, and you're like, "Yeah, do I just sit around and do nothing?" Well, that's not really, um, I like right now, as we're recording this, I'm working on the podcast website. So all the new episodes are there, but I have half of them are uploaded, and then, I'm building that out. And so I was thinking about, well, maybe I'll get some help because I actually do it. I'm the solopreneur, and I thought, well, if I put it out there and nobody responds, then maybe I'm supposed to be doing it for whatever reason that is, right? Or not. And so I'm thinking about it too, as like how I had posted in the group or something. If people put something out, the responses that you're able to get.
Yeah, and I think that comes back again to self-care and the inner work. How are we optimizing our energy to attract to the right kind of match to
Hmm.
help us or provide support, or for us to have that opportunity show up the right one for us? And so when we're doing self-care, we're again nurturing ourselves and helping our energy to be vibrant. And I think that's part of the law of attraction.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how this all kind of pulls together, what we put out and doing the work, and the opportunities will come. We just keep taking the next steps,
Yeah.
trusting the universe. Yeah. Well, this has been really wonderful, very insightful, Christy. Is there something that you'd like to leave the listeners with on something that we haven't touched on with human design and self care?
I think just the idea that it's definitely a rabbit hole and very complex. So I think human design, just take it slow. And if you can find somebody to do a reading, I'd be happy to connect to your audience too. But having that discussion can be really helpful. There's also a lot of great resources out there and podcasts and different ways you can digest it and learn about your design, and just give it time. You have to take in the information, let it process, let it simmer, and also experiment and see what's right for you.
Hmm. Oh, that's really good, solid advice. Let it simmer. See what resonates with us. Take what feels good and discard the rest.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really great. Well, then how can people reach you, Christy?
Thank you. I've got a website. They can find me at kristihsullivan.com. I also have a Facebook community group called Kristi's Human Design and Self Care Community. And that's where I post things like the events that I'm doing. I'm also on Instagram as Kristi H. Sullivan. So connect to me through one of those.
Great. And I'll include all of that in the show notes, as well as the link to all the books. We'll include
Thank
that
you.
in the show notes, and so if somebody's really interested in reading one or all of them, they'll be there for easy finding too. So, well, thank you so much, Kristi H. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Want to make sure people get the right Kristi.
That's right. Find me on
Yeah.
Amazon, not as Kristi Sullivan, Kristi H. Sullivan.
Yeah.
There's another author out there. So thank you.
We want you to find the right one, folks. So thank you so much. It's been such an honor and learned some really practical tips. And so thank you for spending the time with us. If you enjoyed this Light Up Your Worth episode, be sure to share with a soulful friend who needs to hear this message. Thanks so much for listening and being part of the Light Up Your Worth community. My heart is full of gratitude for you. You are my inspiration to shine the light of spiritual, heart-centered women. Now go out there and shine your own light. Sending you sunshine.